All right, everyone. Welcome to the Creative Saskatchewan Lunchroom Series. Today's webinar will be an overview of the web series production grant, as well as an interview with Joanne McDonald and past web series grant recipient Gavin Baird. Today's session will be recorded and it will be posted later to the applicant resources section of the Creative Saskatchewan website. Following the webinar, all webinar registrants will be emailed this link once the recording is available, so keep an eye out for that. My name is Andrea Martineau and I'll be hosting today's webinar. I'm one of the 3 program officers here at Creative Saskatchewan, and I'm really excited to walk you through the web series production grant. Before we jump into things though, let me just pull up my screen here to share. All right, so before we jump into things, I'd just like to acknowledge that Creative Saskatchewan supports entrepreneurs throughout the province of Saskatchewan in treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, which encompasses the unceded territories of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Dene nations, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. The Creative Saskatchewan office is located in Regina in Treaty 4. So next, let me introduce, let me stop sharing my screen here so you can actually see our guests. Let me introduce our 2 guests today. We have Joanne McDonald and Gavin Baird, who will be joining us to talk about Gavin's web series project, 4 in a Blanket, that previously received support through the web series production grant program. Joanne McDonald is an award-winning broadcast executive with over 20 years of experience in the Canadian media industry, and in part helps independent producers tell their stories from pitch to premiere and all stops in between. Joanne is the general manager at CityTV Saskatchewan and is also the co-chair of the Yorkton Film Festival, which will be celebrating 75 years in 2022. And then we have Gavin. Gavin Baird is an independent filmmaker based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. His previous works include the web series 4 in a Blanket, along with the feature films The Big Gust, Begonia, and The Caring Only Cry at Night. So welcome, Gavin and Joanne, and I'll let you take it away.
Great. Well, thanks, Andrea, and thanks to Creative Saskatchewan for hosting this lunch and learn today and inviting me, and I'm sure Gavin would say the same, inviting him to join in and entertain you for the next 20 minutes or so. I won't be doing the entertaining, that's on Gavin, so pressure's on. You have to think of some funny things to say. So welcome everybody once again. It looks like there's a good group with us, and we wanted to talk about the web series production grant. And Gavin, you are a recipient of the grant now twice. Now, first one was for 4 in a Blanket, 4 in a Blanket series, and I was glad to see it nominated at the CIFA's 2018, 2017, 20 something, 20 blur, a few years ago. And it was funny when I saw it on screen. I went back and watched them online, and it's a great sort of non-traditional, traditional sitcom setup. So tell me about the project. How did it start? What goals did you have in mind when you applied for the grant? How did it get going?
Well, the idea for the project sort of started as a bit of a joke with some other film friends. I initially had an idea to go to an actual farm and get a bunch of cameras and film pigs for like a week,
Okay.
and then hire actors to do voiceover and make it sort of like a keeping up with like the Kardashians, like reality show type sitcom with like talking heads with different pigs and like the power dynamics.
I'm not sure how the Kardashians would feel about that comparison, but carry on.
But that format,
Yeah.
I guess. Anyways, that was just a random idea, never did anything with it. And then one day I was watching Seinfeld, and then for some reason the idea came in my head and it just clicked, like, oh, that'd be interesting to do it, a show in that style, but about a family of animals. And then I sort of already had the idea in the name, 4 in a Blanket, regarding pigs. So yeah, once I connected those 2 ideas, the show pretty much wrote itself. Like I was kind of off to the races, and I kind of came up with like 9 or 10 potential kind of episode ideas.
Right.
and then whittled it down to kind of 3 or 4 and combined them. And then it just so happened, I believe it was the first time Creative Sask offered the web series grant. And it was right around that time. So then I applied for the grant, and luckily somehow we got it. So
Yeah, nothing to do with leaving like big packages of bacon sandwiches for the jury or anything. Actually, that's a question. Did you have ham sandwiches on set, or is that just a little bit too cannibalistic for craft service?
yeah, we didn't, but there was some jokes about, I wonder if we should have like any sort of pig products like in the cupboards in the backgrounds, like if there's spam or like packaged ham in the background, but that never ended up happening.
Yeah, okay. Well, season 2 maybe. So what made you think that this project aligned with the web series fund?
Well, I think the main idea was just the style of the show kind of automatically aligned itself to be a series.
Right.
Because up until that point, most of my ideas were like short films or just like one long narrative project. But this is the first time where something kind of really lent itself to being broken up into web series. So yeah, just the sitcom format itself worked well, and I thought that the idea lent itself to being easily achievable to have 3 or 4 5 to 10 minute episodes.
Right. And
the show is kind of centered around just like family scuffles and a lot of jokes. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly saw sort of a little bit of again, it's you were able to condense a sort of a classic sitcom formula into a very short time span. And I kept seeing elements of Married with Children, and then we talked about Seinfeld, and then of course every other sort of classic family sitcom you probably watched after school when you were a kid. And the soundtrack, I mean, having the laugh track as pig snorts was just a really great touch, I thought. So it works. So you thought about this, you went around the bowl a little bit with pigs. So how did you get the team together? Who did casting, on camera, off camera, that type of thing? You were the big piece, writer, director, those kinds of things, but casting?
So yeah, things like casting, I guess in film school, and I'd worked as crew on other people's projects around the province.
Yeah.
So a lot of all of the cast, we didn't do any casting. I just wrote the parts for actors I knew.
And told them they were going to be in it. Is that how that worked?
Well, I asked, but luckily they all said yes. Like Bernadette Mullen, who was the mother pig in the show. I worked with her on a feature in Regina called Talent. She acted in it. So I met her through there. So then I had her in mind when I was writing, and it was basically like that for every single character. So I guess with this project, I was lucky in that I kind of knew people that I thought would be good for other roles, so I didn't have to worry about casting. And then in terms of crew, is sort of the same thing. Like I guess just being around the film community, I've made friends with quite a few people. So the majority of the people I had met at Reyes, like the film school I went to,
right,
or through like Paved Arts or Sympia and that sort of thing.
right.
Yeah, and any people I didn't know, I more or less found them through recommendations of my friends or acquaintances.
Right. Where did you shoot it? Where was the
So
set?
we shot it all in the event space at Paved Arts.
Okay.
We have like a rental event space upstairs.
Right.
Yeah, we built all the sets in their event space and just barely made them fit.
Yeah, well, the set, like again, it was that traditional sort of three-walled three-walled sitcom set. Any challenges come up when you were making this? I know money's always a challenge, I'm assuming, or getting things done, that kind of thing. But anything that comes to mind that was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome?
Yeah, well, there are a few things. Like, I guess with this project, I kind of dived in the deep end with, like it was a funny idea on page, and then I applied, and luckily we got the money, and then it was kind of like, oh no, how are we going to actually make this?
Yeah,
You
well,
start looking at it, and we have to build all the sets, and there's lots of prosthetic makeup, and we want to shoot it multi-camera. So I
right,
guess it's kind of a lot of grand ambition for the budget we had.
right,
But luckily, we know and worked with a lot of great people that helped us. Like, for example, the producer, Carl Zervinsky, he's one of the producers on the project. His dad and his friend had both done lots of carpentry, so they spent a weekend and helped us build all the sets. Because we were
right,
pretty green, like we'd never built sets or anything like that. And then we found a great makeup department too, who helped us with the prosthetics, because every morning, there's 4 or 5 actors that needed full prosthetics. So we had like 4 or 5 makeup artists on set at all times, basically. So
right.
I guess those were the 2 biggest challenges.
Yeah, and I mean, it's and I think you just sort of embody what happens in Saskatchewan. People just sort of all come together, and the end result, everybody really punches above their weight for what's actually on screen versus what resources you have to deal with, which is all awesome. So biggest highlight, you know, looking back, it's wrapped. Was it working with the actors on set during production? Was it post-production? Was it release? Was it your CIFA nomination? What's your biggest highlight about this?
The biggest highlight was definitely just the production and working with everyone.
Right.
It's been like, well, I guess I can't remember, 3 or 4 years since we did it.
Right.
And I still work with the majority of the people that I did on For a Blanket, and we still, like, on new projects, we still talk about like how much fun we had on For a Blanket. And yeah, like I could have shot that thing for like 2 years. That was so much fun. I wish it wasn't, because we only shot for I think 4 days, but I could have shot that for 4 months. It was so much fun. Oh yeah.
Are there any thoughts of doing more episodes for the series ever?
Well, actually, when we were doing it, I had an idea that maybe each season would be a different animal.
Right.
So, like, there could be 4 in a coop and it'd be chickens, or 4 in a dam and it'd be beavers with like animatronic tails smacking the ground.
Right.
But that, I think it was more of a pipe dream than anything.
Yeah, the wrap party after a beer idea, maybe, hey, or something.
Yeah, it's just, I guess doing a sitcom is one thing, but when you involve animals and all the makeup, like it's just, I think it's just so hard to do with a micro budget.
Right.
That I don't, yeah, I think it would just need a bigger budget to really, do more episodes and do it right in a way that I think everyone git's, paid a bit better. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it was a blast to make.
Yeah, no, well, it certainly sounds like it. And like I said, that comes forward when you watch it as well. So it's really good that way. So now this was I think you said it was the first year for the web series program. What how did the project benefit from the grant? Like what were your takeaways from working with Creative Saskatchewan through this being a grant recipient for For a Blanket?
Yeah, working with Creative Saskatchewan was great. It was, this would have been, I guess, my second grant, and like kind of the first more substantial one. Like the
Right.
previous grant was a fairly just small grant, just for a 3 or 4 minute short film. So yeah, I guess when I applied, I didn't really know what to expect because I hadn't received a bigger grant before.
Right.
But yeah, I guess the benefit would be like flat out the project wouldn't have existed without the grant.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest benefit for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll always have a lot of thanks to Creative Sask for that. But yeah, dealing with everyone at Creative Sask was always great. They were always very helpful, answering any questions we had, because like me and Kyle, the producers, were pretty green. Like in terms of grants, we didn't really have any idea of what we were doing.
Right.
And then, but I also felt that the grant was fairly straightforward and kind of easy to comprehend for, I guess, emerging filmmakers. Like we never found it too difficult. You know, it's a lot of work applying for grants, but
It is, but it wasn't complicated. It was just, you know,
no,
a
and
lot of work.
yeah. So yeah, the biggest benefit was just yeah, being given the ability to make the project and I guess kind of further our careers in a sense, or yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And, you know, I know, and I'm sure everybody on the call knows how great the Creative Saskatchewan team is to work with. They know a lot, and they're there to, you know, push creative industries forward in Saskatchewan. And, you know, I've always found them incredibly helpful. And it's a great program. And look, just in a few short years, you've gone from the emerging, never applied for a grant before guy to the expert on the Lunch and Learn. So obviously, you've done really well with this process. You know, like I said, you've applied for a number of grants, and I know maybe some people on this call are thinking about it or unsure. Was there anything in the process you found particularly challenging, or any tips and tricks for first timers that you could share?
Well, so when we applied for this first grant, I guess it was a lot more work than we had ever done for a project. Like up until this point, the things were self-funded. So I'd write the script and then we'd scrape everything together and just shoot it. Whereas this time, you know, we'd have to really try and sell the project, you know, like, so, and in doing that, I guess I found that now I kind of weirdly enjoy doing grant applications, which sounds strange, but it's like, even if I have a project that I don't have a grant, I still kind of do like a fake grant application, just because in doing the application, you really sort of figure out what the project actually is, if that makes sense. Like it really almost gives you a new perspective or a clearer vision on what the project is.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, all applications really want you to focus and, you know, answer a lot of questions about, you know, how are you going to pay for it? Who's going to be doing it? What's it going to look like? What's the timeline? All those questions that have to be answered. But what I'm hearing is you're open for consultations if anybody has extra grant applications that need that need an assistant. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think. So, and I mean, since For in a Blanket, you know, Andrea mentioned there's a number of films under your belt. A feature film was just finished, I understand. Talk a little bit more about where you've gone since that first web series project and what's been going on in your career.
Yeah, so since then, we did kind of 3 features in 3 years. So that summer, right after we did For in a Blanket, we did our first micro budget feature, The Big Gust. which we just scraped together with no grants or anything like that. And then summer after that, we did another feature, Begonia, which once again, we just kind of scraped together. Like I think we spent $400 on the whole thing.
Okay, that's low budget. Well
Yeah,
done. That's good.
It's kind of just in one location, just more as a challenge.
Right.
Just to see, like, could we make a film that's interesting in one space?
Hmm.
And then we also received the Creative Sask micro budget feature film grant.
Right. So you had more than $400 for that
More
one.
than 400, which was great. So that's our last film, The Caring Only Cry at Night. We received at that funding.
Right.
And then this past year, we were lucky enough to get the web series once more. So right now we're in post-production on A Storm Blows Over, which is our new series.
And give me a log line for that. Any animals involved this time, or is it non-animal?
Not this time. I guess the quickest pitch is it's about a young woman who goes searching after the mysterious disappearance of her boyfriend.
Ah, okay. And you're just going to leave that as the carrot. Is that right?
That's the carrot. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So you've got the web series. Did it go on YouTube? Is that what made it a web series, or do you have it up anywhere else?
Yes. So when we released it, we decided to put it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the one thing we did with the release is we just decided to release all the episodes at once.
Right.
So I guess that was the biggest decision. Do we do kind of one episode a week or all of them at once?
Or do you just support people's binge watching and get them all done, right?
Yeah, and I guess maybe it came from more of a personal place because I mean, I watch shows that come out once a week, but if they're all available, then usually I'll just watch them all at once.
Yeah.
I guess that was one of the reasons we did that. And then, we also submitted, there's kind of an indie film site called No Budge, which takes submissions, and I don't know if they're juried, but they're sort of picked, you know. We were lucky enough to get accepted in that. So we had our official online premiere on No Budge.
Right.
And then we posted them to our YouTube channel afterwards.
Oh, very cool. And is YouTube the platform you're going to look at for your upcoming web series as well, or not sure yet?
Well, we're still kind of figuring out. We are also thinking of having it on Vimeo on demand.
Right.
So we're considering the idea of having kind of the first episode free, and then you can pay a small fee just to watch the rest of the series.
Ah, okay, for sure. Yeah.
It's a thing with web series is even like I've done a ton of research, and no one kind of has a clear-cut answer as to like what works best. So it's kind of
it's
to be a bit of experimentation. So that's the kind of idea behind it, is just keep trying and see what works best.
Seeing what resonates. Yeah, and I mean it's a thing where, you know, last year you had Clubhouse and you had TikTok, and everybody was after Clubhouse invites, and now don't know what happened to Clubhouse, but TikTok's super hot. Yeah, so it's just really hard to predict one minute to the next what's going to resonate. But you know, platforms like Vimeo and YouTube have had long-standing success for content consumption. So that's really great. So you've got that on the go. Sounds like you're busy in Saskatoon, and I'm just trying to think. We're almost out of time here before we'll open the floor to questions. If anybody has some very hard questions for Gavin, I'd be happy that he answer them. And any last words, Gavin? As any advice, any last piece of advice for people who are thinking about the web series grant?
I'd say try and be realistic with your budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Four in a Blanket, I don't think when we wrote the grant we were quite realistic enough.
Right.
just with the amount of, if you have a project that you need to build sets and have a ton of makeup and a ton of crew involved, it's probably best to really think about that before you
That's
submit
true.
the application.
Yeah, and before I go on Zoom, I always obviously need a lighting director because the sun has just decided to shine out my window. That's great. Andrea, I guess we'll open to questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, I'm not seeing, we'll give folks a second or two, but I'm not seeing any questions in the chat Q&A. Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for your chat here today. It's really great to hear about Gavin's past projects. And you always ask some great questions, Joanne. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything pop up.
Oh, don't be shy. I will, because there's no questions, I will take 2 seconds and just do a quick pitch for the Yorkton Film Festival. We have a super early bird deadline coming up soon for the festival. That's the absolute cheapest rate you can enter your projects at. 75 years this year. Make sure if you've got something to enter, because it's one of the best festivals in Canada to enter and attend. So with that, I will leave it and enjoy the rest of your lunch and learn.
Perfect. Thank you, you too.
Bye.
All right. Let me just share my screen here, folks. If anybody's having any trouble with it, just send me a quick note in the chat, but I think everyone should be able to see what I'm seeing. All right. So if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, as we're talking about the web series production grant program, just pop them into the chat, the Q&A. Once I'm through my little presentation here, I will answer them afterwards. All right. So let's start at the beginning. The Creative Saskatchewan Investment Fund programs are available to commercially viable creative industry projects and endeavors that include music, sound recording, film, television, interactive digital media, craft and visual arts, book publishing, and live performing arts. So Creative Saskatchewan offers a number of other programs as well, in addition to the web series grant for the film and television sector, including various production grants, development grants, marketing, research, and business capacity grants, as well as the brand new music video production grant, which we actually just did a lunchroom webinar on the other week. It's now posted on our website if you'd like to take a watch of that. And of course, the web series production grant, which we'll be chatting about today. A common question I receive from brand new applicants is, what projects have received funding in the past? If you're curious to see what other projects have been supported through this program, you'll want to check out the recent commitments and annual report pages at creativesask.ca. There are many great projects that may give you an idea of what you can accomplish with this grant program. All right, so what is the web series grant? This program supports the production of multiple episode, short form, screen-based media projects. This grant covers up to 50% of the approved budget, up to a maximum of $10,000. In order to apply, you must work in the film and TV sector, demonstrate your intention to earn your living in the sector and grow your business, be in good standing with Creative Saskatchewan, so that means you're not in default, and be either a registered corporation with a permanent establishment in Saskatchewan owned by a majority of Saskatchewan residents, or you can be an individual who resides in Saskatchewan and has filed an income tax return in Saskatchewan preceding the year that you apply to our programs. There's more information that goes a little more in depth about this on pages 5 and 6 of our general program guidelines on the website. So before you apply, you'll want to make sure that your project is eligible. To be eligible for funding, projects must check every single one of these boxes. They must be new and original. They must be written, directed, and produced by Saskatchewan residents. All phases of production, including pre-production, production, and post-production, must take place in Saskatchewan, and they must be either a scripted drama, non-scripted drama, children's programming, documentary, or animation. Now, you'll also want to make sure that you haven't included any ineligible expenses in your application. If ineligible expenses exceed 50% of the project budget, the entire application will be deemed ineligible and will not go forward to be evaluated by the jury for funding. So you'll want to be familiar with these. Some ineligible expenses include content adapted from another source like books, plays, or short films, interprovincial co-productions, projects that have already received funding through the Creative Saskatchewan Micro-Budget Grant or the Television Production Grant programs, activities that have received funding from Sask Arts or Sask Culture, activity that has already started, as Creative Saskatchewan doesn't fund projects retroactively, capital expenditures, donations, in-kind expenses, core operational expenses, and motivational speaking tools. Another frequently asked question I hear from folks interested in some of our film and TV programs is they want to know if they can apply with a project for their degree, their training program, or a thesis. And the answer is no. Student projects for any educational or training institution are ineligible, but we definitely welcome you to come back and revisit our program once your schooling is done and you have a project with commercial intent in mind. And of course, there is a full list of ineligible expenses in the web series guidelines and pages 8 to 9 of the general program guidelines. So how will you pay for it? Creative Saskatchewan funds 50% of eligible expenses up to $10,000, and the remaining portion of the project budget can be made up of personal contributions, conferred crowdfunding, third-party investment from another funding agency like Film Pool, Paved Arts, or Canada Council. Just a note, reminder as well that Creative Saskatchewan grants cannot be matched by funding from Sask Arts or Sask Culture. So keep that in mind when you're coming up with the other 50% of your budget. All right, now for guidelines. The web series guidelines and general program guidelines can be found on the Creative Saskatchewan website, and they are a crucial read before submitting an application. I kind of like to think of them like instructions for assembling a piece of IKEA furniture. While they're not exactly an exciting thing to read and flip through, if you skip reading them, you might end up with a chair that you can't safely sit on or an application that's ineligible for funding and end up having wasted a lot of your valuable time. I find it really helpful to have these guidelines open in a second window as you work on your applications so that you can kind of glance back and forth between the two documents as you work on it. The web series grant is evaluated by a jury of industry professionals. So the assessment criteria, AKA what the jury will be scoring you on, is available for download on the Creative Saskatchewan website as well. These criteria will give you an idea of what information you need to provide in the application and which sections are more heavily weighted score-wise. So we'll just take a quick look at some of the assessment criteria here. So for describing your creative practice, you'll want to include information to contextualize where you are in your career and why this project is the next logical step. You'll need to provide a description of the project. You can include a one-page concept and a vision statement from the director describing the creative and technical approach. Documents like the one-page concept can be uploaded in the Upload Files tab of the application. For creative materials, you'll want to provide details of the creative support materials, include production information like the dates, key crew, budget level, and viewing links of your previous work, trailers, or sizzle reels. You can upload, again, concept boards or storyboards, if applicable, in the Upload Files tab of the application. Who is your target audience? Provide a detailed description of the target demographic and location of your audience. And project financing. Now, you'll want to describe how this project will be financed and how the expected benefits justify the requested amount. Some benefits might include career advancement, increased profile and visibility, employment opportunities, etc. You'll want to provide details about those contributing to the remaining financial portion of the project that's not funded by Creative Saskatchewan. A reminder here too that the other 50% of your budget that's not funded by Creative Saskatchewan can be funded by personal contribution or other grants, but it can't be funded by Sask Arts or Sask Culture. For marketing strategy, you'll want to list the tools and strategies you anticipate using to engage an audience and promote the series. If you have an additional marketing plan document for your project or your business, this can be uploaded in your profile on the grant management system and will automatically appear in every application you make. So you'll want to make sure that you keep this document up to date. You'll want to describe the project team, including yourself and their responsibilities. Include information evidencing their expertise, their capacity, their ability to complete the project. Be specific to this project and their role in this specific project, and describe why you've assembled this team. You'll want to remember as well to upload their bios in the Upload Files tab. And finally, we have the production schedule. Is the schedule realistic and achievable based on the amount of resources available? All right, so now you're ready to create your application. You've checked out the program guidelines, you've read the assessment criteria, maybe you've even had a program consultation with myself or another Creative Saskatchewan program officer on Zoom or over the phone. You're ready for the grant management system. The grant management system, or GMS as we call it, is where nearly all applications to Creative Saskatchewan's programs must be submitted. It's where you'll receive the results of your application, and if approved, where you'll eventually submit your final report. You can get to the grant management system and create an account and cruise around and check out the applications and what's needed for each of them by either visiting the Web Series grant webpage through the Discover tab at creativesask.ca or by typing creativesask.smartsimple.ca into your browser. All right. So this is what the main page of GMS looks like. It's pretty straightforward. It gives you the choice to create an account as an individual or as a business. And then from there, you'll have access to view the applications, create new applications, submit applications, and so on. So once logged in, this is what your home screen looks like. You can see underneath that little navy blue home banner, you can start an application, check out your active applications or archived applications, work on your final reports if you have any approved grants with us, and view your completed final reports. Now in the top right-hand corner of the screen, where that little monogram is. Beside that, you'll see a templates and additional materials tab. Now that's where you'll find budget templates and other documents that are required for your application. The monogram circle is where you'll be able to update your profile, including your contact information, biography, and marketing plan. And of course, if you have any questions about the grant management system, feel free to give us a call. Our phone number is 306-798-9800. All of our phone numbers are also on the website though, or you can email us at gms@creativesask.ca, and myself or my colleague Ali can give you a hand. All right, now a few tips here. You'll want to make sure to give yourself plenty of time for your application so that you can put your best application forward. There's nothing worse than waiting till the last minute and missing important details on your application or missing the deadline entirely. Applications cannot be submitted after the deadline, so you'll want to make sure that you get yours in and submitted with time to spare. You'll want to give yourself time to become familiar with the program guidelines we talked about and the assessment criteria. Have a chat with a program officer if you have any questions. Complete the application text fields and document uploads. Have someone else look over your application with fresh eyes to correct errors or offer feedback. Have wiggle room in case of computer problems or other delays. And of course, submit the application before the 4 p.m. deadline. And I totally get it. Many creative entrepreneurs would rather spend time working on their creative projects rather than working on grant writing. My only advice is to echo the words of Shia LaBeouf and Nike and say, just do it. Start your application, break it into manageable chunks, save it, revisit it if you have to, and make sure you give yourself time to work on the application without that additional stress of a time crunch. And just a reminder, of course, that our deadline for the web series production grant for this fiscal year is coming up quickly. It's coming up on November 15th at 4 p.m. And of course, we can't forget results. So if you are successful with your application, a program officer will be in touch to let you know what the next steps are and get you set up with your first grant payment. Now, if you are unsuccessful, please don't take it to heart. Everyone has had an unsuccessful grant application at some point. The jury does provide scores as well as consensus feedback for all applicants, and that can be used to improve your project or your application for the future. If you have any questions throughout the process after today's webinar, you just didn't think of it during the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach our team via phone, email, or you can book a Zoom consultation and chat face-to-face with us on the Creative Saskatchewan website at creativesask.ca. And there's just a little icon there for the video chat. And I'll stop sharing my screen here. There we go. So yeah, now it's time for questions. If you have any about the program, about the application process or the grant management system, feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A. I'll give a few moments here. And of course, if you think of any questions later, feel free to give us a call. We can give you a hand there. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or the Q&A, so I won't keep you here much longer. Oh, a thank you from Joanne. So yeah, I'll follow up with the link to the recording of this webinar so that you can rewatch if you wanted to revisit anything. Book in for a grant consultation. We'd love to hear about your project, and stay tuned, of course, to the Spotlight, our e-newsletter, and our social media pages and website for future Lunchroom Series webinars on other Creative Saskatchewan programs. Take care, and I hope you all have a really great afternoon.